We have eminent panelists here who understand not just about what is going on in technology today, but they understand what's going to happen in the next couple of years. What's there on the horizon which can actually open up business opportunities for you. May I welcome Sir Rajiv Soni. He's the President Europe of HCL and very, very keenly interested in the newer technology, cutting edge technology. He's going to talk about smart grids and many more things. And he's going to introduce other panelists.
Thanks, Kanchan. And a very warm welcome to all of you this afternoon. May I request my fellow panelists to join me on the stage here. Sanjay Vijay Kumar, CEO of MobMe. Please give him a warm welcome. May I invite Shantanu Datta from Amazon Web Services. A warm welcome to Shantanu. And Ravi Kiran, the angel investor who has invested in 16 technologies in 16 months, will give us a critical analysis and a perspective from an angel investor side. So, welcome to you all, and I hope this is an engaging session with the audience participating actively in the question answers. What I do promise is that it will be a time-bound session so that we can complete within the 45 minutes. A brief introduction to the technologies that my colleagues have to present over here, and then followed by question answers. So when I look back, just to set the context in place on this frontiers of technology, there are a lot of emerging technologies that are on the horizon, and it's for us to see where would we put our money behind. And some of these have actually gone into fruition, where you've got examples of investments that have paid off, others which are yet to be seen in the years to come. But here and now you find some technologies that come that are breaking technologies which kind of are game changers and have changed the entire landscape of the country. When I look back over the last 30 years, I've seen there have been a few of these, and I think we've also heard some of the speakers in the previous panels talk about it. When the Doordarshan was establishing their transmitters in every state, we had a newspaper headline that used to come out that 532 transmitters have been installed. And then one fine day you had satellite television, which kind of changed the entire game. From one channel we went on to hundreds of channels that are on the entire country having a footprint. It was a game changer, satellite television. A similar thing happened with telephony, and we all know the example of GSM and mobile cell phones, which used to be only an elite CEO could carry a cell phone with him. Today, I think it's percolated down to every level of society. And that was a big game changer. You had, similarly, the IT industry, which did not exist literally in the country 30 years ago, today is contributing almost 7% of the GDP. And that's a big game changer. And now we are seeing Aadhar, which is on the anvil. It's still work in progress, but we expect that that's going to be yet another big game changer. So here, without much ado, setting the context, some of the technologies that my colleagues are going to talk to you about have the potential in them to be game changers for this country and probably for the entire world. So without much ado, I'd ask my colleague Sanjay to come and share with us an introductory note on what MobMe has been doing and how, as a young entrepreneur who was called as a unique entrepreneur, a new breed of entrepreneur, and has made it to the 100 Indians to watch out for. Is that what the headline said? Okay, 35. So there you go. So Sanjay is legendary in his own right, and I'd not steal the thunder from him. let him.
Thanks, Rajiv. Kanchan, if you're there, will the slides come up or shall I start?
Can we have his slides up, please?
So, while they take that quick time to set up the slides, a warm good afternoon, all of you. My name is Sanjay. I come from Trivandrum. I did a small startup when I was in college. So here's the background, right? My mom was a clerk in a PSU. My dad was an engineer. My brother went to an IIT and then landed up in Microsoft. And the moment I was born, I knew I'm supposed to go to an engineering college, take a degree for I don't know what, and then become an engineer. But there, somewhere down the line, I didn't figure out, that possibly something I should do. So possibly a lot of you are sitting here, a lot of you should be entrepreneurs, I guess. And just like a lot of you, I thought maybe I should also start. And this was in 2006. We were reading a lot of the Silicon Valley stories, a bunch of campus startups happening. And then, I was placed in Yahoo and MS. I dropped out in my final year in college. I raised $500,000. And in 2006, I think we were rated as one of India's 100 innovative startups. In 7 and 8, we made into the list called NASSCOM 100 IT Innovators. In 8, I think we were called one of this Wall Street Journal 10 startups to watch out for in India. NASSCOM gives out this award called India Leadership Forum. We won that twice. The only company to have won that twice is us and Texas Instruments. And so on and so forth. So we today are a small team of around 200 people. We make some 25 crores in revenue, some 8 crores in profits. And we are just going IPO in the SME exchange next month. So technically, I believe we'll be the first campus startup to start a journey in a college and then go list in a market. It's going to be a very small listing, and hopefully, I think it'll be fun, and a lot of you will see that as a new way to raise capital. So since the deck is not on, maybe I'll just quickly share a few moments of what we're planning to do. The whole telecom scene, in my belief, I think is poised for a radical change. And I believe that after 600 years, I believe that the entrepreneurs in this country are on the same damn starting line. Now, why do I say that we are on the same starting line? Because when I look at history, 600 years back, in 1600 possibly, the world was going through renaissance. What was my country doing? My country was under East India rule. And then, 1847, something called an industrial revolution came. So the word revolution is very important, right? It's used to, denote something that's game-changing. It's going to be a paradigm shift in the way things are done. In 1847, we were fighting, the first revolt of independence. And then came 1947, a new revolution was happening globally. It was called the Green Revolution. And, what were we doing as a country? We were just getting independence at that point of time. And then came 1970s when, Apple was just a small company, Microsoft was just a small company. In 1970, we were fighting a war with Pakistan. And then came 1990s when, the whole internet revolution started happening in the Silicon Valley. What we were doing? We were as a country just opening up to entrepreneurs, liberalization, and that whole scene was happening. And then came 2006, I believe, almost 2006-07, when I think the Facebook was born, the iOS came in place, Android was born, YouTube was born. A lot of these changes happened. And what I was doing? I was playing Snake on a small Nokia 3310 phone. And what's the interesting thing about 2013? After 600 damn years, we actually are on the same starting line. So people used to ask me, why do these kids in the US actually get to do this? Why can't we create these big companies? The answer is simple. We were always so back. So I think that's the first point I would put across. I think 2013 is going to be a very interesting year for all of us, including all of us and including all of you guys. We actually are on the same starting line. So my focus area is technology, technology in telecom. I don't know about the rest of the stuff, but in telecom we've built a few things. So to put it in a nutshell, how many of you are actually entrepreneurs out here? If you can just raise your hands. A lot of you are. So I believe a lot of you actually have something called a digital signature, which is if you have a director, you have a digital signature. But I'm also sure that you've never seen it. It's actually lying with your chartered accountant somewhere, and they use it once a year to, file your annual returns. And so is the case with me. So here is the deal, or here is how I stumbled upon an opportunity. Oh, the decks have come, by the way. Okay, so maybe I'll use the deck. I'll use few more minutes. Okay. Yeah, so we all have few minutes, so I'll quickly say, let me take some interesting slides. Check. See, I think there's going to be a massive shift, okay? I think there's going to be a massive shift where, so this is changing without me doing this. Okay. So I think there's a shift. So I'll leave this. Can we just leave this? Okay. I think there's a shift happening in the industry. And can we switch this off, please? Kanchan?
Sorry, you need help?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. I'll skip the slides. Yeah, that's fine. So in this new shift, I believe that the world is going digital. And my take is it's going to be massive. In fact, yesterday we were sitting in one of the Reliance Infotel presentations, and they're trying to make Kerala the first state with 100% 4G coverage, and I believe it's going to be revolutionary because the guys are going to give to every home 2.5 Gbps, and I was like, oh my God, that's massive. And then they're talking of 100 Mbps Wi-Fi. And I'm lucky to be in Kerala because we are also setting up this small thing called Startup Village. It's supposed to become the world's largest telecom incubator. We just switched on a 1 Gbps connection. It's an interesting thing. A lot of you should possibly come and see that. And what we believe is we will tilt the scale of innovation to Kerala, but that's a different side story. Anyway, the thing is, in a digital world, I believe people need digital signature. So imagine if you had a piece of paper and you tick marked, I agree terms and conditions. If you don't sign on that paper, there is absolutely no validity for that. And this is why in MCA 21, all of us entrepreneurs who are directors, we need that digital signature just to put our digital identity on that stuff. And I believe that, the opportunity of digital signatures going on a mobile phone is going to be massive in the next couple of years. And here is why I think so. In the year 2000, we had 40 million landlines and 40 million mobile phones. It was almost the same. And people used to ask, why do I need a mobile phone? Ghar pe to ek phone hai, office pe ek phone hai. But after 12 years, this 40 million mobile phones grew to 900 and 40 million landlines fell to 30. The answer is simple, convenience and mobility. See, I think that people will get jacked of this username password funda. I don't use a lot of internet banking because the whole transaction password, the password thing is going to get really, really crazy. And imagine the next 400 million people who will actually use smartphones to use internet. Any website, and I believe this is the opportunity for all of us entrepreneurs to actually grab on. See, the US guys, what do? They first saw internet in 90s. They saw it in a PC. And then came iOS, and then they saw internet on a phone after 16 years. So by default, a US entrepreneur thinks of a big screen and puts it on a small screen. So every damn thing has a username password. But think of the first 100 million people, including all of us sitting here. We also did the same trip. We first saw internet on a PC, and now we are seeing it on a smartphone, which is an iOS or an Android. But I believe the next 400, 500 million people in India, they will actually see it first on a smartphone. And they will not understand this username password to start with. These guys will go to facebook.com and it will say login, create username. He will go through the same trip that we did. A simple password. Then we add 1, 2, 3. Then we add a special character. Then it gets complicated with uppercase, lowercase. And then the next damn website says you can't use this because you've used it somewhere else. You can't use it for the next 10 times. And so on and so forth. So I believe that opportunities will open up on mobile phone for people, let's say for a blue-collared workers, LinkedIn. People have been trying to do this in the SMS era. People have been trying to do a lot of things in the SMS era. So here is something that I'll wrap up with. See, we had a small company called Inos. And these guys used to do SMS search. See, everybody's tried to do SMS search right from the year 2006. But Inos started in 2010 with SMS search. And they are the largest SMS search engine in the world right now. So, we had an opportunity to see that company and we invested in that, and then Seed Fund invested a next round in that. So here is what I saw from that story. A lot of the opportunities which we thought were possible in the SMS, USSD, IVR era, and which a lot of people tried and failed, didn't work out, will now actually practically become possible in the smartphone era. So my take is we should possibly take a lot of those failed things and possibly try it again, because the smartphone will democratize all of this. And I believe that a lot of companies will start in that era, which will, and I think that one of them will soon turn out to be $1 billion startup. Thanks.
Thanks, Sanjay. That's a very interesting introduction to digital signatures and authentication, which you talked about, and more interestingly, your story about getting into an entrepreneur, getting to be an entrepreneur at a very early age. I'd now request Santanu Datta to talk to us about cloud. And how many over here in the audience who are familiar with cloud? Raise their hands, please. It's a fair number of them. So his question, the question that Santanu's been having in his mind is that, you'll have as many definitions of cloud as the people in the room. I'd now ask him to explode the myth around cloud and give us what is his definition at Amazon Web Services.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a pleasure to be here. I just see so much energy around in this event, right, with budding entrepreneurs all around. What a day to be here, 21st of December 2012, right, when the world is supposed to press the reset button and the earth as we know is supposed to come to an end, according to the Mayan calendar, right? But obviously that's not true, right? We are all here, alive and kicking, and about to talk about technology in the next frontiers, right? I'll talk a bit about, I don't need the slide, that's fine. You can just shut them off. It's a distraction. I'm going to talk about a word called as cloud, as Rajiv mentioned, right? Or cloud computing, which is just a buzzword in the industry, right? In the last couple of words. It's been just overused and overhyped and beaten down to death by every other person, right? Now, cloud over the years, in the last couple of years, especially in India and globally, incidentally has become very synonymous with entrepreneurs and startups, right? And there's a special reason for that, right? You as an entrepreneur shouldn't be adopting the cloud just because it's an industry buzzword or everyone else is using it, or you keep hearing it on TV or radio, right? Or your neighbor uses it, right? It's because of the genuinely significant benefits that you can actually leverage from it. And as a part of my day job, when I go around meeting customers and businesses or potential customers, right, the one misconception people have is cloud computing in general is just another platform to save you costs and save you money, right? It's low cost, right? Now that's true, right? But then there are a million other examples or facets for which you should be developing the cloud or adopting the cloud, for that example, right? I mean, yes, it is low cost. But then there are a couple of other use cases as well, right? For example, it's about the flexibility of paying for those low cost in a pay-per-use model, right? Just like electricity. You use the resources like servers, storage, etc. And then when you turn them off, you start paying your bill, right? It's just like electricity, right? When you don't use your light bulb and switch it off, your electricity meter bill stops, right? That's what cloud computing is. It's a flexibility of pay-as-you-go model. It's also about the elasticity of actually scaling up your traffic and your demand of your resources as and when you wish to, and actually scale it down when you don't need them and again stop paying for them, right? It's also about faster time to market and automation, right? We all know the amazing story of Instagram, right? Instagram actually started off on the AWS cloud and till date is on the AWS cloud, even after the Facebook takeover, right? There was an interesting story. They actually started off with 3 co-founders and 3 engineers on the cloud, right? With their use case 3.5 years ago. When they grew significantly after a year and a half, they were still 3 engineers, right? Till about the Facebook takeover, close to that, they were just 3 engineers managing a massive infrastructure behind the scenes, right? Interestingly, in a recent tech meetup in the New York area, I think, one of their co-founders were addressing an audience where he actually took them through the entire architecture of their application and how they're designed on the cloud. Towards the end, during Q&A, there was this reporter who asked them, right? If you were to given a choice to actually redesign this everything, your business model and your infrastructure, right? Would you do it on the cloud again if you were given a chance? And he replied in a very simple response, saying that, remember I told you we had 3 engineers? The reason for that was we had a 4th engineer, and that was the cloud, and that was huge for us, right? Obviously, what he meant was the amount of automation they could leverage on the cloud, right, meant that they didn't need personnel to manage it, right? And that's why it's become synonymous with startups. Some of you might have attended the morning session with Vishal and Alok with the startup kind of guidance event, right? How they have gone about their businesses with India Games and Window Games. And they mentioned a very interesting point. if you have to be a successful startup, right, you have to learn to kind of absorb the failures, right? You have to experiment often to kind of absorb failures before you're successful, right? Now, if you have a series of ideas to experiment, right, and you invest significantly in server and storage and whatnot in infrastructure, and you go too far down the line, after which you realize you failed, the cost of failure could be significant, right? On the cloud, with no long-term commitments and contracts, right, the cost of failure is literally zero, right? You just don't pay for it. If you have an idea which fails, you just shut down the resources and your billing stops, right? And that's what the cloud can be used for, right? A lot of entrepreneurs think of how my business can be successful on the cloud, right? A lot of people think about how can I reduce my cost of failure on the cloud, right? That's what clouds can be used for. Before I end, I'll just speak about another buzzword which a lot of people are talking about, called as big data. Any of you have heard of the term big data, right? It's probably used as equally as the cloud these days, right? So big data, a lot of people are asking what it is, right? How is it different from the traditional business intelligence that enterprises have been doing over the years, right? How is it useful for startups, for example, right? What has changed in the last 10 years is the velocity, volume, and the variety of data that is flowing in, right? Whether it's machine-generated data or it's human data, right? Whether it's data from e-commerce, social networking sites, etc., the volume of data has just exploded over the years, right? Take an example, a traditional car manufacturing company, right? They have their business intelligence tools, they have the ERP systems. Today, they can find out what is the highest selling car that they have in the market, right? And it's easy to find. But how about finding what is the sentiment of people that are buying their cars or cars all around, right? That's something that's outside and beyond the organization. It's basically scrounging the Twitters and the Facebooks of the world and finding out the sentiments of people buying cars, right? And then adopting a new car model or whatever, changing the manufacturing strategy, etc., right? And big data is all about taking all this massive data, processing it parallelly into multiple nodes, and then gathering intelligence out of it, right? And that's where cloud becomes big data's best friend. Simply because in an on-premise infrastructure, you can't really go from one server or one instance to thousands of nodes and then scale down back within a matter of minutes or hours, right? That's something you can do in the cloud. To give you another example, right, how big data is changing the world, it's not only on this planet Earth, which is supposed to end today, by the way, but also outside the planet in NASA, right? When NASA's Curiosity Land rover, right, landed on Mars back in August, right, they were actually sending streaming images to Earth, which you're all watching on YouTube. And since then, what they've been doing is they've been getting high-resolution images, processing them in thousands of clusters on the Amazon cloud, and then actually processing them in human-readable format and streaming, right? So the possibilities are endless. And that's how you should be thinking about the cloud, right? With that, I would probably end. Just a quick pitch because we're lacking time. You could just move on to the other piece. Yeah.
Thanks, Shantanu, for the introduction on cloud. I'm sure it gets us all onto the same page. We'll have an opportunity to ask questions around that and how relevant that technology is to each of you over here in this hall, and how much of an impact it's going to make in this world. So the third topic which I would like to introduce is around smart grid. And in a way, what Sanjay spoke about in terms of telecoms and what Santanu talked about in terms of cloud and IT, there's a third component that you add into the mix, which is power engineering. And the convergence of all these three really leads to what smart grids are all about. Before I get to discussing what is smart grids and why is it such a great opportunity, I think the background to that and the context is very essential. If you see the recent storm around Sandy and Katrina, not the Bollywood star, I'm talking of the hurricane, the storm that took the east coast of Americas, and the devastation that it did during this time has almost costed about $400 billion. Now that's a staggering figure in terms of the kind of turmoil that climate change has caused. And the 2-degree threat that exists today in terms of warming is a real threat. And all these abrupt and irreversible changes that you're seeing in the climate are for real. When you've got such a backdrop to it, you have no choice but to see that your carbon emissions are considerably reduced. And today, just to give a sense of dimension, we are spewing off almost 1 gigaton of carbon emissions every year. And the world should have a target of almost 35 gigatons. As opposed to that, we are likely to hit 70 gigatons, which is twice the amount in 15 years from now. The impact of all of this in the utility industry or the electric energy industry has been that you've got an antiquated infrastructure worth $3 trillion. Unfortunately, I have to talk about such an industry in 3 minutes. But given that it's a huge industry and it's still in the dark ages, it's got a lot of potential that exists in bringing about efficiency. And with 177,000 power stations churning out from fossil fuels, all the energy, the inefficiencies account for almost as much as 60% on account of generation alone, another 10% on transmission and distribution, and another 10% at the residential area. So, in an industry where you have got 70% or 80% inefficiencies, the headroom for bringing in efficiency is huge and colossal. So the business case for it is very simple, that there is an opportunity to bring in products and services that could seize this opportunity straightforward. Sorry about that. The areas of opportunity are very simply around the IT industry, which has already been created. And today, when you see the IT industry is going down year on year in terms of growth rates, in terms of margins. So, emerging here is a new opportunity through smart grids that one can morph the IT industry into and start digitizing and bringing the digital world into the smart grid area. So, if we look at what are the specific opportunities, the specific opportunities are in asset management, in meter deployment, in electric vehicles, in cyber security, in home electric management systems, and a host of others. So, this is really an ocean to boil. You can start anywhere. There are no standards at this point in time. There is interoperability issues that exist. The adoption of all of this is going to take a little bit of time. So these are some of the challenges that you will be faced with. Nevertheless, having said that, there are a million areas that you can actually get into in terms of developing products and services for this. But more about it when we go into questions and answers. Having said that, I think the three technologies that we've talked about may sound very sexy and very interesting, but it's always good to take an investor's viewpoint and see what is the kind of perspective that they have. And I'd ask Ravi Kiran, who's made 16 investments in 16 months, to give his perspective on what does he think about these technologies and, in general, your view on making investments as an angel investor.
For a fantastic introduction to smart grid. So it looks like questions are the need of the afternoon. So I'm going to ask you 2-3 questions as well. How many of you here are technology entrepreneurs? Please raise your hand. Okay. How many of you are mid-sized businesses, not startups, mid-sized businesses? Startups? How many startups? Okay. How many have ever raised money from someone you didn't know, like a stranger? That's a few. How many have raised? How many want to raise money from people you don't know? And a few. Good. So I went to the valley to do my engineering 25 years ago. But I learned 10 years later that I went to the wrong valley because I went to Kashmir Valley. Right? When we hear valley today, we know which valley it means, right? So I went back to my valley 6 months ago to complain that, hey, 25 years ago I came here and now I realize it's the wrong valley. Jokes apart. So even if I'm an engineer by education, I don't consider myself a techie because good part of my career, last 20 years, I did something which could be called quite non-technical, which is understanding why people like us behave the way they do, right? And then when I left my paid job corporate job last to last year, earning whatever little money I could over 20 years. And all that I'm trying to do now is burn that money as fast as I can, so I can go back to being a startup. So I do run 2 startups. One of the startups actually invests in companies, but after mentoring them, and another startup helps mid-sized businesses scale. Coming back to investment, and more importantly, the topic of the day, which is new frontiers of technology. And I was telling Rajiv that maybe I was put here by mistake because somehow frontiers of technology are not really me. Then I realized that when you look at technology and new things that are happening from an investor's lens, someone like me who's relatively new to angel investing, I must say, only about 18 odd months. But I met a lot of exciting companies, a lot of very enthusiastic and passionate entrepreneurs. And every time I attend forums such as these, I met more, such as Sanjay right here and many others. There are a couple of quick comments I want to make for anybody who wants to raise money from strangers. And I say strangers because that's when you talk about angel investing, where that's the first time you go to people outside your family. You don't go to your own bank account, you don't go to your friends and family. After you have done all that, then you have to go to strangers saying, I need your money. And many of these strangers have, earned their money in whatever way they did. And now they have to decide whether to put their hard-earned money in your business. And then you meet more strangers, such as VCs, venture capitalists, often apparently derogatorily referred to as vulture capitalists. And then to private equity players. Sometimes you can bypass all this and, like Sanjay, go to the public market directly. And that's a good thing quite often, because those strangers are quite far away from you. For example, after Sanjay goes public, he may not actually meet any of his public investors for years and years. So it's good fun. They can't really come to harass you except in your AGM, where you can give selective passes so that not a lot of people come in and so on and so forth, right? So 2 things really. One is there is a temptation I've seen in India for people to compare our startup ecosystem to that of the Valley, Silicon Valley, and I would say nothing could be further from truth. And I think every time I have seen either a startup or an investor try to compare, oh, the Valley investors are different, in India they are different, and there's somebody else saying, oh, the Valley startups are different, here startups are different. So first of all, I think the Indian investor, the angel investors, and there are no more than about a few hundred right now, although they will grow over time, are very, very different from the investors you may find in the Valley, right? One of the ways they are different, like it or not, how many technology entrepreneurs have actually met any angel investor or a VC in the last, let's say, year or so? Any? Okay, 1. 2. How many of you think these investors, individual angel investors or particularly, how many of you think they understand technology? How many of you think they don't? Right, so we probably got answer, although there are not a lot of hands are still down either way. So we have more absent votes than yes or no. But in general, and it's a fair thing to say, most investors in India, angel investors, do not understand technology, right? Except the techies. So I'm obviously ignoring the techies. People who have come from the Valley, people who have built technology businesses, taken it to a place and so on. I'm ignoring those. Most of the money doesn't come from that. Most of the money comes from people who have made their wealth in classical businesses. People who are real estate companies, or people who are stockbrokers or traders and corporate suits and all that, which is, classical businesses, right? So you should not be surprised when you go to an investor to raise money and he say, what are you trying to build? I can't understand. And we hear that a lot of time. So I happen to be a member of one of the two of the largest angel networks in the country, Indian Angel Network and Mumbai Angels. And every month, both of these networks get about 100, 150 applications for investing. Only about 1 gets selected. That means about 99% or maybe more than that do not get selected. And quite often, after a whole half an hour presentation done by your startup, some of the investors are asking, so what really are you building? Now, this has got a positive and a negative. The good thing is that they don't understand technology. Because if they did, they'll ask you really, really tough questions, right? Because they don't understand technology, you could look at, in addition to this guy's money, what else do I want from him? Because I don't really need, if I'm a good guy in technology myself, I don't need somebody's technology understanding. So you could say, maybe this guy understands customers. Maybe this guy understands how to hire people, how to build teams. Maybe this guy understands the law, right? So that's one of the things you have to think about, is that when I go to raise money from an individual, what am I really going for, right? And it's very important for you to understand the angel ecosystem in that way. Coming to the so-called frontiers, again, from an investor's point of view, I have now formed in my small way my own filters on how to look at technology. So in my view, technology, I don't look at technology per se, because I'm not really investing in basic science or basic research or, space technology. Most of the companies we meet at startups are basically companies which are trying to solve a consumer problem or a business problem. So I look at less of technology and more of what technology does. And I feel now that I can, over last 7-8 months, I figured that I can now club a business run by technology into one of the three things it does. So first thing our technology business does, one of the things it does is improve productivity. So that's number one, right? So when you think of, for example, smart grid, how do you reduce efficiency, reduce inefficiency, and improve productivity of production and distribution and consumption of electricity, right? There are a lot of technologies. Let's say you get a SMS alert that your flight is late. That technology improves productivity, because now you don't have to rush to the airport and then find your flights are late. That's number one. Second thing is reduce pain. I think almost anything which can reduce pain and uses technology is great. So, for example, we all know that pain will be created in future by lack of food. A lot of our people, both in India as well as elsewhere, go without proper food in right quantity, in right quality. So, how can agri-technology and the new ways of deciding, new ways of improving the productivity of soil, improve or reduce the pain of not having enough food on the table, right, and stuff like that. One of the companies I've invested in, for example, is believes in forecasting weather reasonably well, weather patterns, so that farmers can benefit by doing the right thing, the right time, and so on and so forth, right? And that's pain. Third thing is obviously improving pleasure. So a technology that gives you pleasure, such as our Facebooks and games and other entertainment vehicles and so on and so forth. So in my view, productivity, pain, and pleasure. So if you build a business out of technology, I think there is immense opportunity in focusing on one of these three. I just feel that till now, a lot of our technology application has been, a particularly visible technology application has been in the area of delivering pleasure. That's why gaming companies, entertainment companies, social media, social networks, mobile technology, a lot of that is focused around delivering pleasure. I think in future we will find fantastic application, and those are maybe new frontiers of uses of technology in improving productivity, both individual as well as business productivity, as well as reducing pain. And I feel that if more and more startup energy, investor money, ecosystem support goes into these two, we'll have a great future. So those are my initial thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ravi. When I talk to entrepreneurs and I talk to other fellow colleagues who have met with angel investors and investors, they seem to ask the question, it's so difficult to get the money out from the guys. And you make it sound so simple that there are only 3 P's to worry about. Your pain, pleasure, and productivity. And it looks like it's so easy to get the money. I don't know which side is true. So we have about 7-8 minutes in which we can have questions from the audience. And you can put them to any of the panel members here. They would be happy to take your questions. I see a hand up going there.
Good afternoon. My name is Apoorv. We often see technology which seems very dazzling, like the driverless cars by Google or the Google goggles, which they claim they will soon start producing, at least the goggles. But the people who have reviewed them, the tech radar and stuff, TechCrunch, they say they are nowhere near completion. The voice commands are not recognized. The visual ability of those goggles is nowhere near completion. So how true is that for all sorts of technologies? Are they really as advanced as we would like them to be? Or how, as companies pitch it to us?
So I'll give you my view on this. I'm sure everybody has a different view. My view as an entrepreneur on technology is, I just compare it with Microsoft and Windows. The best version of Windows never comes out. If you try to build the best version of Windows 90 and 95 and XP and 2008 and Metro, and none of these things will never come out. So what I've realized from my limited experience is this: ship. It's not about actually the technology. It's about somebody paying you money for something you have, which will solve a problem of theirs. So I see technology as an enabler to a business, not a business by itself. And every time we've made money from a client, we've never sold them a technology. They have a problem and we go and tell them, my box solves your problem. And they pay me for that. So, two parts to that answer. I believe that the best version, it keeps changing. It keeps continuously changing. For example, I was reading an IBM article on what's the next big thing on mobile phones. And to be honest, it blew me. Imagine how that is going to be. Forget a Google goggles, right? This is like unimaginable. As in, you're not able to even picturize this kind of stuff these guys are saying. So, as an entrepreneur, if you want to make money, take an existing thing, solve an existing problem, get the money out, and wait for the next big thing to happen, possibly. So that's my view on this. Santanu, I think you will be the right guy on Amazon angles.
It's a constant evoluting thing, right? I mean, it's constant evolving. I mean, you can't just, the Google, goggles example that you give, right? It's constantly evolving. Yes, the first version that comes out might not be the, everything that it produces to be dazzling as it promised to be, but then it's constantly evolving and it will ultimately get there.
I have another question, if I may.
Before you get there, I think, if some of you may have seen the Gartner's hype cycle, and, you've got to see where it is on the hype cycle. There are some early adopters and those, where the technology is mature. So it's really a question of where it is in the hype cycle. A lot of these things come up with a lot of excitement, and there will be, these are beta versions. But part of that beta version's objective is to get these, get the rough edges out and get them to be more sturdy and mature over a period of time.
The question is, on one hand we have smartphones like say the iPhone, or the recently came out the Google Nexus 4, which is available on Google in US for $349, but by the time it comes to India, it will be closer to 30,000. On the other hand, we have a car like the Suzuki Kizashi, which in Japan is an amazing model, but by the time it reached India, it's cheaper definitely. But the car is completely changed. It's no longer as good or as good looking even as it is in Japan. So it cannot simply be that we can't afford it, because on one hand we're buying something more expensive, on the other companies are not giving us what we can afford. So why is that there?
So what's your question?
My question is that why, let's say, when we can buy more expensive products, when we are paying more for some products, why other companies are not giving us what they're giving to other countries?
So maybe I'll take a lead again here, right? So in fact, I keep wondering about the same question. When I buy a damn iPhone, why does it cost so much here? It's much cheaper there, right? So the same question is actually in my head also, and I believe that Micromax figured out, hey, this is going to be an opportunity, and I totally relate to what you're trying to say. I get what you're trying to say, and I don't know if you've been seeing, my epiphany moment for this, the closest I can relate to, came when I saw the new Micromax A102 or one of those phones. The damn thing just looks like a Galaxy S3. If you remove that Micromax from the behind, it's actually a Galaxy S3.
So it basically looks like an iPhone.
No, it looks like a Galaxy S3. It doesn't look like an iPhone, right? So
No,
what
I
I'm
mean,
trying to say is when the early Chinese phones came, when I was, I think in 2007-8, when the first set of Chinese phones came, it was a mass different from the usual Chinese phones we had. The Indian companies really made sense, which is why they made a ton of money selling that. But I think that they've now come to a stage where a company like Micromax is actually able to make something nearly as close to a Galaxy S3. I believe in the next couple of years, this barrier will be bridged, at least in the case of smartphones. I don't know about cars. But I think in the smartphone thing, they're actually doing it really well. In fact, to actually crack this, when I get excited about questions like this, so I went to China. And I went to the factory where they actually make these phones. And, this is just outside the topic, but I think it's interesting for you guys to know. See, the same damn factory makes it for Micromax and Lava and Spice and everybody. And the only question the guy asked me is, "Kitna aega?" How many pieces? It's like 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. They don't even want to know what are the specs. They only want to know what is the number of volumes that you can supply. So they've massified it to such a large level that the price is really crashing. The only thing I think they still haven't figured out is the battery, which even I don't know. So these are questions for which I don't think there are like really single solid answers. But my gut feel after seeing the new Micromax thing is the next 2-3 years, I think we'll bridge this gap.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I'm told that we have a couple of minutes more, so we can take maybe
yeah.
a question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have a question for Shantanu. Is cloud for the average person who is putting out his business, maybe just a website or an app on the cloud, or is it for experimentation or only for models which are expected to scale up from, let's say, a single small server requirement or a shared server, then looking forward to going something big? So is cloud okay for somebody who's just looking at hosting a small application or a small website or something like that?
It's honestly, yes. I mean, it's for everything and anything that you can run. It's finally, as long as it solves a business challenge or a business problem, it doesn't really matter whether it's a cloud or it's an IaaS or a PaaS or a SaaS platform, as those terms that exist in the world, right? It could be for experimentation, right? It could be for reducing your costs, right? If you do not know the future or the success of your website or a portal or the use case that you're putting in, put it on the cloud, because you don't have a long-term liability or contract or a commitment with the cloud provider, right? Because all you're doing is paying by the hour, right? When you don't pay when you just shut down your resources, you don't pay for them. So it could be for anything and everything. The cloud is not meant for a specific use case as such, right? It could be for anything, as long as it solves a business problem and gives you the benefits that you look to. So,
Actually, Shantanu was telling me a little while ago that his entire business around the cloud is rather focused around high volume and low value in terms of many number of SMEs and others who want to do little things or want to do it as they go rather than large enterprises. Enterprise is a focus, but that's a different story altogether, is what I heard him say.
just another example is, and this could be interesting. I met this young entrepreneur in Goa in one of the events, and he was into this niche business of covering live weddings in remote rural villages in India. It seems people have the money there to pay them extra to actually stream their marriage, the entire 4 hours or 5 hours over a period of 2 days, live to their relatives back in Europe or US or wherever that is. And what he did was basically went around with his crew with his camera, streamed it in a digital format to the Amazon cloud, and had this massive infrastructure to actually stream it across to whatever, your laptops and your mobile devices to his relatives across India, right? Now, he said the demand is so unpredictable, there is no way I'll know how much infrastructure I would need in a month's time, right? So the cloud just made sense for me. I just get a contract for a wedding, I just go there, use the cloud to kind of stream this entire event live, and I shut down the resources on the cloud and I stop paying for it till the next marriage event comes up. So, I mean, possibilities are limitless.
We'll take the last question from here, please. Then we can interact with them later outside.
Hi, my name is Avinash Bharwani. I want to know, with all these technology innovations happening, how is the education landscape really equipped in terms, what are the new technologies that you'll see being in the industry that are going to come up, and do we have the skilled manpower? What are the new skills that engineering students would require? Because today there's even a gap between an engineer and what the industry really wants, and tomorrow we are talking about these new technologies. Do we have the skills to really scale up that fast? And so if you could just throw some light on what are the new technologies and what are the skills that are really required?
So let me just share with you one example that comes straight to my mind. And I met this young entrepreneur from Jaipur the other day who was building learning systems. And he said exactly the problem that the Indian IT industry particularly is facing is that they're getting young graduates who are not yet ready for either technically or otherwise with communication skills or other soft skills. And you need to train them. So they are building a platform and a learning solution which is going to be provided to the Indian IT industry. So you imagine that the leading players are hiring in excess of 20, 30,000 youngsters every quarter. How can you get them deployed on customer premises or in real projects when they are not yet ready for doing the job? So you do need these solutions, and I see that as an opportunity that entrepreneurs here can think of as a potential area in terms of technology that can be deployed in getting the students ready for the industry. So I know of some companies that are already engaged in this, but I think the headroom for this is huge, given the fact that the education system in this country is going to go through the roof. There is an enormous effort being put on education with the proliferation of schools, colleges, and charitable institutions. And a lot of them, we heard Afsara yesterday, and there are a lot of new institutions of every kind that are coming into the country. But where is this training going to happen from? Automated systems and technology solutions will probably give them the answer.
No, it's no follow-up. So, of course, I understand that being in education. So my question was, what are these new technologies? Are they something which are totally revolutionary? Are they something from the main domain of hardware, networking, and software? Or are there new technologies that are being used by Amazon and MobileMe? So that just to get an understanding about how are they moving, how do they see, because they are the new technologies that are coming. How do you see it panning?
To name a few, yes, the basics remain same. The hardware, software, networking, those concepts don't change really. It's an evolution of the use case and the way we use them and the way people are consuming them is changing, right? I gave that example of big data, for example, right? It's not really a technology, it's a concept wherein the volume and velocity of data has changed so much that the way we process data has changed, right? How we do it in the back end could remain the same. It could be the same hardware. The way we do it is the same. Anyone here heard of NoSQL, for example? It's different from the traditional RDMS databases where you have just a NoSQL key value pair instead of the traditional joins between tables, etc. Most social media networking sites, because of the scale, like the Facebooks of the world and the Netflix of the world, use them, right? And to give you a different perspective as well, from an education perspective, as you mentioned, how do we kind of scale up to it? What we see with cloud computing providers and Amazon, the direction where we are heading off, is providing these technologies as a service. For example, providing NoSQL as a service, so that you don't need to really learn and ramp up on the NoSQL piece because that's underlying. You're getting it as a service where you just pump in your data and the processing will be done at the back end by the cloud computing provider on a pay-per-use model. Big data as a service, data warehousing as a service, for example, right? Streaming as a service, for example. That's one perspective because we realize that not every organization will have the skill sets. So they could actually provide it as a service where you don't really do the ramp up of the underlying technology. You just see it in your console or wherever and just put in the data and get the processing output. So that's where it's headed.
I'll add to that. So I'm a big believer the education system is broken. And I'm a big believer that the engineering education is actually, in crude terms, it's actually a 4-year vacation. I don't know why they give you 4 years to actually get a degree. You can actually get it in 6 months. That's what I feel. You can just keep writing these exams because the moment you have got out of the exam hall, you don't even know what you've written for that whole stuff, right? So what we're doing, and in fact, we are also experimenting on this. A lot of these questions, we should actually try to possibly do. So I'll tell you what we are doing. People have been saying, hey, we don't have a lot of iOS developers, Android developers. So in Kerala, what we're doing is we've got a tie-up with Oracle where we're training 30,000 students in Java. The theory is that 29,000 of them will not get it, but I will get 1,000 core Java engineers. I don't know who they are, but they will come out of this training thing is what we are figuring. So we'll get to know, maybe after a year or two, we will know what will happen when you train 30,000 Java engineers. The second thing is, I believe that the engineering system as a whole, it promotes individual thinking. But in the real world, what we do is collective efforts. The whole education system from your school and college says one guy has to get the highest amount of marks, but in a professional life or in an entrepreneur life, it's all about the team. So they're getting it wrong somewhere. And what we are doing is, for example, nobody ever asked me in my school, they always ask me 5 plus 5 equals question mark. So there is only one answer to that. The answer is 10. If somebody had asked me question mark plus question mark equals 10, then there are infinite possibilities. So what we are doing is we believe that the education system is broken and it doesn't promote creativity and individual thinking. So what we've done is, for example, in a BlackBerry zone where we have in Startup Village, we've kept a small car. Okay, it's a battery-powered car, and what we do is we've got a BlackBerry phone with a gyro, and we bring school kids from 9th standard to 12th standard. We give them the BlackBerry phone, and all they do is to actually move the phone, and the car moves. You move the phone forward, the car moves. So what we are showing is the damn phone can actually move a physical object out there. What you can come out of it, I don't know. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to spark that creativity. And from my experience, what I've seen is we've had a bunch of kids who came to me and from the same college where I studied. So these kids are developing a glove for Parkinson's. Okay. And they came and showed me some 3D modeling and I was like blown out. I'm like, how did you even figure out all this? So then he showed me, you need to have intelligence. So at first he thought, he's mocking at me saying I'm dumb. But then it struck me, 6 years back, I was in the same boat. When internet first came, and I used to jump up and down and saying, this is going to change, this is going to change. All my teachers didn't simply get it. And I first saw, in second year in college, when I saw computers and, internet and all that, I was using PowerPoint and I was making a word proposal and all that. These kids did that in 6th standard. So when he entered engineering, the guy is actually working on AutoCAD and all that stuff. So I believe the next generation is totally different. And yeah, I think Rajiv will wrap it up.
Running out of time and I'm getting signals that it's about to we should close. I do finally agree with you that laying roads and building airports is going to take decades in this country, but knowledge multiplies very rapidly. And what children did in the yesteryears, what they're doing today is very, very different. But I want to thank all of you for being a very engaged and enthusiastic audience. And thank you very much for my fellow panelists for sharing technologies and the perspective around technologies, Ravi Kiran. So on that happy note, we shall conclude today's session. Thank you.
Again, I want to thank Rajiv for anchoring this session. Rajiv was saying, I'm moderating. Do I have to say? I said, no, you're not moderating. You're anchoring. So you're sowing the seed, you're laying the foundation, and then get the best out of all the great entrepreneurs we have who think very, very differently. Sanjay, I've known. I used to heard him in Kerala in Tycon, and I said, Sanjay, you need to come here. I have so much energy and so much different thinking on the lateral side that I was really impressed with. So I'm glad you came here, Sanjay. Really appreciate that. And again, Susar Dutt and Shantanu Datta, sorry. I thank you. What we have done is we are giving like a token of charity to a couple of organizations that we, as a tie, on your behalf. So this is something I would like to give it to you, Mr. Rajiv Soni, for you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Sanjay.
Thank you.
Shantanu. Sorry. And Ravi. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hey, so just before all you guys break, in fact, I would also want to thank, the entire Tycon organizers here. So have you been actually to Tycon Silicon Valley? Has anybody actually been there in this audience? Yeah, it's a couple of guys. For rest of the guys who've not been there, even I used to wonder, what's Tycon Silicon Valley? Because it's supposed to be this big thing, right? So last year I went. Trust me, it's like 1/4 of this. Okay. So I believe that Tycon Bombay is extremely dynamic. I believe that, this is, in fact, what you guys see here is exactly what's happening in the valley. So, I just wanted to share that thought that, there's nothing different happening there. We are actually in that same boat. So now let's all try to be entrepreneurs and, make some money out of this game. Thanks.
Thank you.